Michael Jordan Brooks was born and raised in the small town of St. James, Mississippi. The town was quiet, sun-soaked, but saturated with unspoken rules. Michael knew which streets not to walk down after dark, and which doors were never meant to be knocked on. Since he was little, he'd been told, "You have to be twice as good to get half as much." He was smart, always reading more than anyone else, speaking in school debates, and dreaming of getting into Harvard. His mother, Ruth, worked as a nurse in the local clinic. She raised Michael alone, teaching him never to turn away from injustice. "If you're silent, you're part of the problem," she would say. Still, in his school, his achievements were often dismissed as privilege points. When he won the local history competition, a teacher, not realizing Michael stood by the door, muttered, "Probably just the panel wanting to be politically correct." That was the first time Michael truly felt a crack in the invisible wall. Not shattered, just cracked. At 17, he applied for a student exchange program in New York City. He got in, thanks to his grades, his essay, and a heartfelt recommendation from Mrs. Hudson, the school librarian and the only adult there who truly believed in him. Michael left St. James with nerves in his chest and hope in his eyes. New York would offer a different kind of freedom, and a different kind of inequality. What he didn't yet know was that his story was just beginning to find its voice. New York hit Michael like a wave. Tall buildings, screeching subways, people speaking languages he'd never heard. He stepped into the world of South Brooklyn High School, where the hallways buzzed with energy and students wore everything from vintage leather to neon sneakers. It was chaotic, alive, and indifferent. In the first week, he learned quickly that diversity didn't mean equality. His AP literature teacher, Ms. Thompson, often cut him off mid-sentence, only to nod thoughtfully when a white student repeated the same idea moments later. In the cafeteria, he noticed how some kids, mostly black and Latino, were always being watched by security, while others glided through without a glance. But Michael didn't let it slow him down. He joined the debate team, where he met Sophia Martinez, a fiery Bronx girl with a sharp tongue and sharper mind. She became his first real ally. Together, they won arguments on climate change, healthcare, and prison reform. They spoke with passion, and sometimes with anger, the kind born from lived experience. One day, after practice, Sophia leaned against a metal locker and said, "You know they're never going to really hear us, right?" Michael looked at her. "Then we get louder." That was the night they created Speak, an online student journal for voices that often went unheard. They wrote about racism in classrooms, wage gaps, and microaggressions that bled into every part of the day. They didn't ask for permission, just posted. Within a week, the site had 1,000 views. By the second week, a local journalist messaged them, asking for an interview. The spark had caught flame. By the time winter hit New York, Speak had gone viral across high schools in 3 states. Students started sending in anonymous essays, stories of teachers making racist jokes, guidance counselors steering kids of color away from advanced classes, cafeteria workers treating immigrant students like shadows. Michael and Sophia curated every piece with care. They didn't sensationalize, they humanized. Each post ended with a simple line: "We are more than statistics. We are here." One morning, Michael arrived at school to find a printed version of their latest article. "The Discipline Divide," taped across the principal's office door. It broke down how black students were 3 times more likely to be suspended for the same behavior as white students. The article had numbers, names, and truth. By third period, the principal summoned them. Inside the office, the air was cold. Principal Reynolds folded his hands over his desk, eyes scanning Michael and Sophia like they were intruders, not students. "This platform of yours," he began, "is causing disruption." "It's telling the truth," Michael replied evenly. Reynolds' jaw tightened. "Some people don't want that truth. You're walking a fine line. Keep going, and you might find doors closing in places you care about." Outside the office, Sophia hissed, "Did he just threaten us?" Michael nodded, the fire in his chest burning hotter. "Then we're hitting nerves." The warning only fueled them. That night, they published a new post, this time titled, "The Silence of Authority." It was about the meeting. No names, just facts. Just fear and fire. The post got 10,000 views overnight. They had woken something up, and not everyone wanted it awake. 3 weeks after the warning from Principal Reynolds, the school board called an emergency meeting. Word spread fast. Speak was now under formal investigation for disrupting school order. Flyers appeared on lockers saying things like, "Respect your school, not online hate," and "Don't let activism become aggression." No one claimed responsibility. but Michael and Sophia knew where it was coming from. At lunch, some students began avoiding them. Teachers gave colder stares. Even Mrs. Thompson, who once encouraged class debate, now spoke in clipped sentences around Michael. It was working. The system was isolating them. But not everyone turned away. A quiet junior named Darius stepped up. Then Mei Ling, a soft-spoken freshman with a loud pen. Soon, Speak had a team of 10 students, coders, writers, editors, who refused to be silenced. They decided to host a student-led forum. Our Stories Matter. It would be after school, off campus, in a rented community hall. Michael and Sophia expected maybe 20 people. 100 showed up. Kids stood at the mic with trembling hands, telling stories they'd never dared speak aloud. A girl shared how she was told to straighten her hair if she wanted to look professional. A boy confessed to hiding his accent to avoid being mocked. A non-binary student talked about bathrooms being zones of fear. Michael stood last. His voice cracked at first, but it steadied. They told us we were making noise, but noise is what happens when you break the silence. And silence, he looked across the crowd, has never saved us. Applause thundered. Tears fell. And something changed. That night, a photo from the forum, Michael at the mic, hands mid-gesture, made its way to Twitter. It was shared by a civil rights journalist, then a city councilwoman. By morning, it had 50,000 likes. The silence was broken. The days after the forum were electric, but not all the currents were safe. Support came in waves, but so did backlash. Anonymous messages flooded the school's social media pages. These kids are just looking for attention. Race-baiting liars. If they hate the school so much, why don't they just leave? Michael's inbox was full of both thank yous and threats. One morning, as he walked into school, he saw it. Spray paint, black and sharp across his locker. Speak lies. A custodian tried to scrub it off before first bell, but Michael stopped him. Let it stay, he said. Let them see it. That afternoon, Sophia found Michael sitting on the gym bleachers, staring at the ceiling. You okay? She asked. He didn't answer right away. Then, I keep thinking about that night at the forum. I felt free, and now I feel like I'm holding something too heavy to carry. Sophia sat beside him. That's how you know it matters. But things got worse before they got better. The school suspended Speak's website from the campus Wi-Fi. Teachers stopped recommending Michael for scholarships. Someone submitted an anonymous complaint accusing him of creating a hostile environment. Mrs. Hudson, the librarian, was the only adult who still stood beside him. She handed him a worn copy of James Baldwin's The Fire Next Time and whispered, "Don't let them break your fire. They're just afraid of it." That night, he read Baldwin's words by phone light. You can only be destroyed by believing that you really are what the white world calls a nah. Michael didn't sleep, but he decided. If they wanted him to stop, they'd have to silence more than a website. They'd have to silence the truth. And truth, once spoken, echoes. February brought snow to Brooklyn, and with it, silence. After the spray paint incident, the school issued a vague statement about student respect, but refused to acknowledge Speak or its message. Michael kept showing up, kept writing, kept walking past the painted-over locker like it was still stained. Then came the letter. A plain envelope in his mailbox, no return address. Inside, a typed message clipped from newspapers like a ransom note. You are not a hero. Stop before someone stops you. He showed it to Sophia and Mrs. Hudson. Both wanted to go to the police. Michael said, no, that's what they want. They want fear to win. But the pressure was mounting. His mother, Ruth, called every night asking if he was safe. He said yes, but didn't mention the envelope. He didn't mention that now he looked over his shoulder walking home. And then, one bitter Thursday morning, it happened. He found Darius, the quiet junior who coded for Speak, in the nurse's office with a busted lip and a cracked phone. 2 students had jumped him in the locker room after gym. Said, "This is for all your blog bullshit." That night, Michael posted a single word to Speak. Enough. The next day they staged a walkout. At noon, more than 300 students stood up, walked out of classrooms, and gathered on the frozen football field. Banners read, "We will not be silenced." Michael stepped forward. Sophia passed him the megaphone. We didn't come here for war, he said. We came here for peace with truth. But when peace is punished and truth is silenced, that's when we walk. Camera crews showed up. So did local politicians. One of them, Councilwoman Erica Lane, took Michael aside. "We need voices like yours downtown," she said. "Come speak at City Hall." Michael nodded. Snow fell around him in soft spirals. He felt the cold, but inside the fire burned hotter than ever. City Hall was a different world. Marble floors, glass elevators, echoes of conversations in suits and polished shoes. Michael had never felt so out of place, and yet never more ready to speak. Councilwoman Lane led him into the hearing chamber where a session on youth safety and discrimination was underway. He'd been invited to testify as a student advocate, a phrase that still felt surreal. When his name was called, the chamber quieted. Michael stepped up to the microphone. He held a folded sheet of paper, but he didn't read from it. "My name is Michael Brooks. I'm 17, and I'm here because silence almost cost my friend his safety, almost cost me my future, and it's still costing too many kids their voices." He spoke about Darius, about the letter, about the hallway glances that turned into bruises. He described Speak, not as a rebellion, but as a reflection, the uncomfortable mirror the school tried to smash. He ended with a question. "If students feel safer on a website than in a classroom, whose failure is that?" The chamber fell silent again, the kind of silence that listens. Later in the hallway, a reporter from the New York Times approached. "You've started something big," she said. "Where does it go next?" Michael looked through the glass walls of City Hall, snow melting under distant sunlight. "Wherever it's needed," he replied, "until no one has to scream just to be heard." That night, Sophia uploaded the full video of his testimony. It trended within hours. Offers poured in, from youth panels, civil rights groups, even universities. But more than anything, messages came from students across the country. "I thought I was alone. Thank you for saying what we couldn't. You gave us a voice." And then, a message from St. James, Mississippi, from his old school librarian, Mrs. Hudson. "You're not just breaking glass ceilings, Michael. You're shattering walls." Spring came slowly that year, but it came. By April, Speak had grown beyond Michael and Sophia. It became a national student-led platform with chapters in 6 cities, a podcast, and a mentorship program for young writers. Teachers began using it in classrooms. Politicians quoted it in speeches. What began as a spark had become a signal fire. But change wasn't perfect, or easy. Michael didn't return to his old school for graduation. The administration offered to reconsider some of the punishments and even invited him back for a ceremony. He declined. Instead, he walked across a small stage at a community youth conference downtown, wearing borrowed robes and sneakers scuffed from protest marches. Ruth pinned a small silver eagle to his collar, a gift from his late grandfather. "You've earned your wings," she said softly. Sophia got a scholarship to a journalism program in D.C. They hugged goodbye at the train station, promising to keep building, to keep writing, to keep listening. 1 month later, Speak published its most powerful story yet. A collaboration of students from across the country. Stories of racism, homophobia, bullying, classism, all stitched together into a living mosaic of truth. It ended with a single line. "We were taught to whisper. We chose to speak." That summer, Michael stood again at a podium, this time not in defiance but in celebration. He spoke to new students, younger ones, who had read his words and found their own. After the applause, a girl no older than 12 walked up and handed him a folded paper. On it, a drawing of a boy with fire in his chest and stars in his eyes. Michael smiled. Not everything had changed, but something had.